What's up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? We are here with Frank Myers for the Blonde Sabine Masterclass. How you doing, Frank?
Great, Loopy. Thanks for having me.
Well, no, thank you for doing this. And you took this deck to Orlando and did very well. Tell us how you did.
7-1 in Swiss, third coming into the top 16 cut. Got through the top 16 and ran into the buzzsaw that was Guy and lost to the champion in the top 8. So lots to be proud of there. Nothing to be disappointed with when you play that well and run into somebody like a player of that caliber. He's fantastic.
Right. And this was a fluke occurrence. You've never top cut with this deck before, right?
Oh shucks! Don't embarrass me. I made it. I made the top 8 in the Atlanta 1K with this deck the week before.
All right, cool. And I think that, Sabine is a very good aggro leader. We'd already had a Sabine Green Masterclass. I think that this deck is different in how it runs and some decision points. But why don't you tell us why Blonde Sabine? Why would you bring this deck to a major tournament for Star Wars? What does it have on the table?
So I think Blonde Sabine has a better turn 2 through 5 than Green Sabine. Green Sabine's fantastic, and there's some outstanding players that run Green Sabine. I know even in Orlando, like John Tata, Michael. They're just doing amazing work with Green Sabine. And if you want to play Green Sabine, if that's your cup of tea, go for it. It's a fantastic deck. I think I have some things to show today in the discussion about why the blonde version has more legs than green, so to speak.
Well, blonde has more. Yeah, blonde has
more legs.
They have more fun. They have more legs. They have more of everything. So
I think so.
And before we get to the deck, how did you actually find Star Wars Unlimited? I know you've been playing for a while, a little bit before release.
Well, yeah. I'm old. I picked up Magic, I guess, in 94, 93.
I quit Magic in 1994. I was young.
No, you're not that old, Loopy. What were you, like 6 in 1994? Come on.
I was 14, but I still have a box with like 2 Moxes in it somewhere, because I didn't realize they were valuable till like 10 years later.
Man, you could trade that for like 1 box of Star Wars boosters now. So I played Magic. I was way too serious about it. I played, traveled for tournaments, the whole 9 yards. Quit Magic for good, like maybe 10, 12 years ago now. Just the resource system, the mana screws. Like every third game, somebody was losing because of the inherent flaws in Magic as a card game. And then I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I kind of did a little semi-retirement, soft retirement this year, and I had some time on my hands. Ran across Star Wars on Force Table, maybe like in January, February this year. Started playing, loved it. Like they fixed so many things that were wrong with so many other card games I had tried.
Right.
This even down to like I take an action, Loopy, you take an action. It felt much more strategic, like chess. Like it's not I sit back while your stasis deck runs for 10 minutes and I may get to do something again in 12 minutes. It's so much better, I think.
Yeah,
personally.
And I'm of the opinion that the game is currently now gaining steam on the game itself. Because you're right, they didn't try to make the most innovative CCG that they could. They tried to make the absolute best one, and I know.
So, go ahead, but I think because I want to actually support what you're saying. They have definitely wanted to make the best version of a TCG they could. There is, though, however, an inherent, almost undercurrent disrespect to the developers when I've told people before, hey, they've just made the same stuff and made it better. There's actually some really good innovation in Star Wars Unlimited. Like there are some things they're doing right now in set 1 that is, to me, it's just been like these developers are doing such a great job.
Yep, and it's not meant of a slight by any means. I think they made the most.
Means it's slight, but there's that undercurrent to me that they're just they didn't reinvent the wheel. They just made the next best card game. But I think there's more innovation here than they sometimes get credit for, the developers.
That's probably a fair point. I think they made a very streamlined game. I think they fixed some of the inherent problems with the Magic the Gathering system. This is the first game. I have my Magic buddies that I started with. are still playing Magic. I mean, a couple of them are like Pro Tour players, good.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to know them. I just got to get them to draft this game, and I'm sure that it will. I'm sure that'll be because Magic players love draft. It's the best way, I think, to play.
Yeah.
It's only Magic really I've played in the last 20 years is I fill out draft pods for those
We
guys.
need some packs though to draft. So if you can come across some packs to draft with, please let me know because they're pretty hard to get right now.
I may have 18 in my bag, but
Let's go. I'm coming over to
we have a great store in Milwaukee that ordered huge for this game because he knew what was coming. And all right, well, let's talk about your baby. Let's talk about the Blonde Sabine. So this is the list that you ran at the tournament.
Right.
Tell us in broad strokes what the deck's trying to do.
Well, okay. So when I first got into Star Wars in the Force table, and realized this was going to be a really deep strategic game. This has a lot less fog of war, so to speak, than other TCGs. And because of I do an action, you do an action, you have so much more information when you're deciding what to do. And since there's no interrupts, you can make your action. It's going to happen. There's no counter spell. There's no like, oh, well, before you do that, I ping here. No, you can assess the board state. You can assess the strategic units on the field. You can make a very good estimate of what you think may be in their hand. You can make a choice, and that choice is going to get played out. I love that. I love it. It's so much better. So when I started to analyze the set one, I thought, well, let me just start from the beginning. I think you should learn aggro first. Let me spend a lot of time on aggro, because if you can't understand aggro, you can't play control. And if you can't understand control to beat aggro, midrange is like the hardest deck to play, in my opinion, because you have to understand how all the decks are working. You have to know when you're the aggressor. You have to know when you're trying to take control of the game. So I thought, let me just start from the beginning. I'll start with aggro. And my wife loves the game. And so I thought, let me build a simple aggro deck for her to play. I love Chewbacca. We'll talk about Chewbacca more later. It's a seriously underlooked at card. So I built her a Chewbacca-based, we called it Blonde Sabine after some negative comment she got. But anyway, so when we built the deck, I, of course, then went on to my control decks. I love control. I'm an old school blue player in Magic. I kept losing to her. Like, I couldn't beat her. My brother, who's also the triangle of our testing group, he was a Bubba Green. He was losing to her. We're both losing to my wife playing a simple yellow aggro deck. Why? Okay. Well, as I started to investigate why, I realized I got to play this at some tournaments. It was doing really good at the locals. And where I've identified this deck to be superior to Green Sabine and why I have an undefeated, knock on wood, record against Bubba right now is because of space. One thing so unique about the Star Wars Unlimited game design is the two arenas. You almost have to think about your deck like you have a space deck and a ground unit deck. And then you have your tricks. So you have three parts to your deck. So if you want to go to the next slide, check out how much more superior Cunning Sabine can be in space versus Green Sabine and versus the Boba Fett in space. Bubba right now, if you look at like the top Boba Fett players, they're not even running. They've even moved Star Viper to the board. I mean, look how few space units Boba Fett is the bottom line on this slide. They're not running much in space. Green Sabine fights back in space. I've even seen the top players. I love like the John Tadas, the Michaels, and those guys. And some of them are running a couple of Bright Hope's main deck. Most of them have moved away from just these four core units in space. So what does Blonde, the Cunning Sabine bring? Millennium Falcon. We'll talk about that. And then I think it's genius. I hate to say that, but the gunship that no one likes but me, apparently, the gunship kills all of that. Look at what Green Sabine's bringing to space, especially pre-board. The gunship on turn 3 kills whatever spaceship they put down. Whatever you put down, it dies. And even in Bubba, you're not getting a better spaceship until turn 5 if you get your fire spray. If you draw your fire spray and you're still alive on turn 5, then that's the first time you can even make a real fight back in space.
Man, see, I love that you came armed to this masterclass with slides.
I mean,
There's a,
this is grandmaster level stuff, dude. You want I mean, people watching your videos, and they're fantastic, by the way, Luke. It's really my honor to get to come on here and talk at all about whatever ramblings I have in this old person head. But this is where the best content for high level Star Wars play is being discussed.
I,
It is. Your videos are fantastic.
yeah, I appreciate that, and it's all to the guess. I mean, it's incredible that basically the entire Orlando Top Cut has taken a couple hours out of their time, to go and try to help other players improve. I mean, I think that's a testament to the community, all the way from guys like you and George that brought their own homebrews to. I mean, we had some of the Bobby Sapphire is maybe the most accomplished Star Wars content creator anywhere.
Bobby. I'm not worthy.
Yeah, and he came and did that. So I mean, all of you guys should get the credit. I'm just here to put up your slides. So tell us what you got with Sabine versus Green Bean turn 1. What's this trying to tell us?
So if you're gonna choose to play Cunning Sabine over Command Sabine, you have to realize, yes, Green Bean has a slight advantage with your turn 1 play. There is not a Battlefield Marine. We have Lothal Instigator that we can use, and you'll see it in my updated list later. I like Leia over the Rebel Pathfinder, but generally, Green Bean does come out on turn 1 and have an advantage. They have an advantage with initiative. If Green Bean has initiative on turn 1, it's dangerous for Cunning Sabine. I mean, just dangerous because of ECL as well. We don't have ECL. So a lot of what they can come out with in turn 1 and even leading into turn 2 can really start the game off with a big advantage the Green Bean favor. And I think a lot of players, they get behind at the beginning and they don't have the pieces to come back because they're not playing Chewbacca, they're not playing Gunship, they're not playing it's so weird. This matchup really becomes that the Blonde Sabine is the control deck against Sabine Green.
Yep.
So if you ever play Green Sabine against Blonde, Blonde is your control deck 100% of the time. And a lot of the reasons is because the slides you just showed, look how much better things get for Blonde on turn 2.
Okay, so explain that, and you got some math here. So I mean, what are you telling us with this slide here about turn 2 for the Blonde Sabine versus Green?
Right. Blonde Sabine turn 2. Well, I think Green has the advantage on turn 1. A well-built Blonde Sabine deck has the advantage starting as early as turn 2. We've already mentioned Falcon. Falcon's incredible. Falcon's a whole reason to play Cunning in any hero deck. Then 2, we have Ezra, we have Rogue Operative. Rogue Operative does not trade as well into Green Sabine because it defends with a 2. I don't like it. I like Ezra better because of that. The other advantages on turn 2 that we have is that since we're running more turn 2 plays that are solid, that are good, great plays, really, our percentages, our chances of drawing a good turn 1 and a good turn 2 are higher. You see a much more consistent draw with Blonde Sabine than you do with Green Sabine. That's what those percentages were showing you if you want to go back to that slide. Yeah, right here. So the odds of Blonde Sabine having a turn 1, turn 2 drop is almost 85%. It's only 78% for turn 2. And as you see, they're a little bit better with turn 1 drops. So really it's turn 2 that Green Sabine can falter more often than Blonde Sabine will falter.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say as a Vader player and a turret player, mid-range decks that are trying to get under the aggro. So half of Sabine Green's turn 2 plays are terrible if they don't have a unit out. So
oh no,
I mean,
right? So look at that. How about Wing Leader and Fleet Lieutenant?
Right.
You can't do anything with those cards if Power of the Dark Side hits you with initiative. What do? Just put out a Fleet Lieutenant with nothing to pump? Put out a Wing Leader with nothing to pump? If that's your turn 2 play?
A lot of times turn 1 with Vader, if you're holding an open fire and Sabine has initiative, the correct play, I think, is to just claim without doing anything turn 1. Take initiative, open fire, whatever Sabine played, so that hopefully she only has a Fleet Lieutenant or Wing Leader in her hand.
Right.
So,
but look how much better Blonde Sabine has on turn 2 if you do that.
Millennium Falcon's a problem.
We get to go to Falcon. We get to go to Rogue Operative. We have useful, powerful cards. They have Fridays for Freedom, and they have red 3 like we do, but we have much better options on turn 2. And if you talk about how to resource, because I'm always my wife Courtney and I are always working on like, hey Frank, what do I resource here? Look at this hand. You've got to be ready to have a turn 2 drop that if your turn 1 drop is dead. And Blonde Sabine just has more better options in my opinion than Green Sabine does more often. The math says it. I mean, you can't argue with the math. The math is that. But a highly skilled player like a John Tata, like a Michael, they can outplay them, other people who don't have a great turn 2 drop. But I'm just saying, I think people have been sleeping on some of these cards that we're including in this deck. And I really hope to see more people try it. Yeah, it's working.
All right, so this is actually a slide you made to talk about turns 1 and 2 between Boba and Blonde Sabine. Why don't you tell me what you got going on here?
Okay, so the big picture here, this is more about a bigger conversation about how do you prep for tournaments? How do you improve yourself as a player? I have a long list of ideas, but one of the things that I think more people need to do is lay the decks out. Like when you put a deck together and you think your deck is good, lay it out. What are you doing on turn 1? What are you doing on turn 2? What are you doing on turn 3? And then put the other big meta decks next to it. And look here, this is an example. This is just one example of that, how I laid out, like, Bobby from K2OD. I mean, they're fantastic Bubba players. This is their, I think this is their most current Bubba Green deck list. But what do they have there that you would rather have than one of my turn 2 plays? Maybe the Bubba unit. Maybe ECLing in the 7th Fleet's great. Outside of that, especially if I don't give them anything on the ground, I don't know what they're supposed to do on turn 2 to start fighting back against a rush of here's a turn 1 unit, here's a turn 2 unit, here's my much better turn 3 unit, K2SO or the Gunship. And oh, by the way, I'm going to slam the door on you with Chewbacca. You don't have a way to get through him without adding something else to something.
All right, so let's talk about Sabine Leader. I mean, we don't need to read the card for this series, but tell us about the immortal question with Sabine, to ping or not to ping. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's really all your Green Sabine video is fantastic already. It's really all about initiative. I mean, if you can get 3 damage with initiative that you couldn't have gotten without initiative, then the 1 ping doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? It's always analyzing the situation. One thing that is even more interesting to me is the decision to flip or not. Because a lot of people, and I was at first too, I had a local player in Birmingham, Carl, who did some great testing with me. I was so wrong. I was like, you always flip Sabine. Why would you not flip her? Just flip her and attack. He showed me some things and in my research. So Bubba will often pass waiting for you to flip Sabine. So what you do, here's what you do, everybody, when this is happening. When Bubba's or anybody's passing, waiting for you to flip Sabine, you've attacked with everything you can attack with. You've pinged already with your damage. You used all your resources. So you've deployed new things, and all they're waiting on is for you to flip. Then you take initiative and don't flip. But only after you've exhausted everything you can do in turn 3, and it's so backbreaking.
Now, did you play Boba in this tournament? It was the most represented deck.
Yeah, I hit it twice in Atlanta, and I hit it 3. Let me look at my notes. I hit it 2 or 3 times. Yeah, I hit it twice. I think I hit it twice both times. It feels like I've hit it 5 times total. I've hit 3 green Bubbas, beat them all, and hit 2 yellow Bubbas and beat them.
All right, and I think the yellow is actually a tougher matchup too because it can aggro in a way.
Well, I played a guy, Saunders. Oh my God! In Orlando, he just missed the top 16. I feel bad. I think it's because of our match, but yeah, there's some crazy good cunning Bubba decks and some players like Saunders who are running them that are just like, man, this could be the future.
All right,
especially if they get some new pieces in the set too.
So the next slide you told me, it's called the real Sabine. So you and I share something.
Yeah.
We both play Star Wars Unlimited with our wives. So run me through the actual story of how this deck was named.
Well, it's okay. So she is about, I guess, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago now when she first started playing at local game store stuff. Mm-hmm. She beat somebody 2-0 with this deck. And I don't know if they didn't know I was her husband, or I overheard him kind of complaining to his friends after the round, between rounds, and he made some really disrespectful comment about like, only a blonde airhead would play Chewbacca and Gunship in a deck. I mean, something like that, like really being dismissive. And so after that, I was like, we're just going to call the deck Blonde Sabine. It's yellow anyway. Let's just call it. And she's blonde. So her nickname, when she signed up on Melee for her first tournament, we're going to do a couple of 1Ks in Orlando in a couple of weeks together. She put Blonde Sabine as her nickname on Melee now. So you'll see her on there like that. So, but she's serious into it. Yeah, she's serious. She tests all the decks. She lays them out with me, works on. And honestly, it's her fault I had Metal Ceremony in Orlando. We'll get to the deck list in a second. I do not like Metal Ceremony. I don't want Metal Ceremony. The night before I packed to leave, I had the deck laid out, and she's like, "Where's Metal Ceremony?" I'm like, "Oh, I took it out for this." And she's like, "Put it back in. You have to play Metal Ceremony." Yes, ma'am. So I did the boss said, put it back in, and hated having it the whole weekend.
Well,
love you, babe.
Yeah, and I shout out to my wife Diana too when she watches this, because she's a Sabine player as well. But as a turret player, you can cut Metal Ceremony all you want. That's the last card I want to force throw out of your hand. So
yeah, that's true. That's right. Force throw would be. I didn't get force throwed, so that would have been nice.
All right. Well,
but here's the part of the show. I mean, this is wow. I can't believe that. I don't know. I can't believe this legendary is not as expensive as Vader or Boba or any. This thing is fantastic, and it's just going to get better with set 2 comes out, with all the underworld stuff that's going to be happening. It looks like if you want to invest in cards, invest in a few play sets of Millennium Falcon.
Yep.
You heard it from Uncle Frank.
Uncle Frank says, buy your Falcons.
Yeah. Or so Silver Fox Frank, is that what you called me?
I didn't say that.
In the video
I
with
deny
George and Guy, no?
If it's on tape, I'll name George. I'll blame him. All right, so let's talk about this. So first off, it enters play ready. It's obviously good for an aggro deck. But how often do you pay the tax? I mean, you can run through that analysis when you're actually piloting this deck. Because do you ever bounce it back to hand?
I have. The best story about that is I was in the top 16 cut, actually playing George Hudson, George the Hulk, and he had a 6/6 Lieutenant Childson. Awful. And I tested with George for about 7 or 8 hours on online play the week between Atlanta. We met in Atlanta, the top 8. And so he was so great. He's such a great guy. We're still I think I'm supposed to be testing with him tomorrow morning, I hope. So we're working together on our decks. He's getting a lot of great input on his deck from the KTOD group, I think. Those guys are amazing. And in the play testing, I was having trouble at 6 resources, turn 5. So I put my faith in Wisdom of the Crowds, and I put Gorilla Pod in, a couple of Gorilla Pods, because that's a nice... Everyone else is doing it in Sabine. I guess I should do it too. No, I do not like Gorilla Pod. And playing it in Orlando, it did not... Anyway, okay. But... So I got to 6 resources, playing George. I don't know if it was game 2 or 3, but it was a critical moment in the game. I had a Falcon out, and I had 6 resources coming up, and I had to decide whether to tap to play the one for the Falcon. I brought it back to my hand. And George, woo, that rattled his cage. He was talking, "Why are you putting the Falcon back in your hand? What are you doing with 6 resources?" He had my deck list. We had to exchange deck lists, but he didn't see Change of Heart coming. And so... playing with him for that week and watching him in those 3 games, he was not attacking with Lieutenant. He was leaving Lieutenant Childson ready. You can't do that against any cunning player with 6 resources. You cannot leave your big fatties ready after your first action, because he had initiative. So maybe he removed something. I think he might have played a takedown on one of my units, and I change a hearted after picking the Falcon back up into my hand. I change a hearted his Lieutenant C, and I think that was GG right after that, because I hit him for 6 with his own Sentinel, and I let my other units get through. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, George. Love you, brother.
Yep.
We're working together, man. Don't abandon me.
I
think he told that story from his perspective on your late night gaming masterclass anyway.
Yeah, no, and we got Change of Heart coming up here too. On the Falcon, itself. So I mean, typically you do, leave it out.
Yeah.
100%. And did you ever play a Falcon on top of one?
Oh, yeah, Nick. I think in game 1 with Nick, which was streamed, you can see it at the end of game 1. I think Nick's masterclass was fantastic. Again, one of the best thrills of the Atlanta top 8 and the Orlando top 8 has been just the players I've gotten to meet and interact with. I mean, these guys are light years ahead of where I am, and their playing is so fantastic. That Emperor Palpatine deck has given me so much grief. In Atlanta, there was a guy, Savage Dragon, running it. He just beat me. Like it was like bad. And I got in there with Nick, and you can hit with Falcon for 3 after paying 1, and then you just put another Falcon down on top of it. You discard the one that's already attacked, and now you have a ready Falcon for 4 resources. You just did 6 damage, and that's really hard. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, and if you saw the set 2 stuff, there's a card called Ma Clunky. I don't know if you saw that yet, but it's a 1-cost yellow neutral that returns any underworld unit to your hand and then does 3 damage when you do it. I mean, that's going to synergize too. All of a sudden you have, some zaps, and you can
be an underworld deck.
Yep.
There's going to be some really fun underworld decks coming up, I think, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm excited for set 2 too. All right, Surprise Strike. Core card of the deck.
I mean, this is what Green Bean doesn't have. I mean, Green Bean does not have Surprise Strike, and it's, again, I'm biased. This is one reason, if not one of the biggest reasons, that Cunning Sabine is better than Green Sabine, in my opinion.
It's different, but the burst damage from hand. I mean, I recall a content creator, a long discussion, about Sabine Yellow, which prior to the Steadfast reveal, was the dominant Sabine, for the people that were doing release and doing some content for the game. But I mean, eventually,
for that air.
His advice on the subject was don't cut Surprise Strike, which is right. It's 3 damage for 2 to the base usually.
Yeah.
For this deck.
And so the grief that I've gotten pushed back with Green Sabine apologetic people is that, well, you don't want to flip this over with for a cause I believe in. Well, do you or don't you? If I see a Surprise Strike as, if I only do 3 damage with a for a cause I believe in, but now I set up my next draw and I'm about to draw Surprise Strike, I'm very fine with that. I'll take 3 damage from for a cause and a Surprise Strike next turn. Almost any game you want to do that. I mean, it's not. So my point is just that the penalty of playing Cunning without the hero aspect with for a cause I believe in it's an illusion that it's bad. It's not bad when you consider why you're not getting that point of damage just because you're drawing the Surprise Strike and it's like a Fleet Lieutenant on without the stick. I mean, it's just terrific. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
And that's actually our next side, Fleet Lieutenant. How to play in Orlando?
Yeah. Oh, one of the best cards. I mean, come on. Because again, this game is back to the strategic element where it feels chess-like, where I do one thing, you do one thing, and being able to ping to take initiative, and initiative is so important. Fleet Lieutenant breaks those rules. You're getting a 3/3 body into play, and you're getting to attack, and it's +2. If Fleet Lieutenant just said when played attack with a unit, it'd still be playable because you're still getting an action economy out of it. I mean, I would take Fleet Lieutenant even without the +2/0. You put the +2/0 on it, it's like, I mean, what Sabine deck, what aggro deck and hero wouldn't have this? So I've even saw like Phil, who ran Luke to 3rd place. I think you did a master class with Phil, right?
Yep.
We've gone around and around because we test now together online, and he just recently, I think, may have cut down on Fleet Lieutenant in his deck, but even in like a mid-range, like a Sentinel Vigilance type hero deck, you can play Fleet Lieutenant because there's so many good targets for this. You don't have to be playing aggro to play Fleet Lieutenants.
Right, and I mean, ultimately, you're building the best deck. I mean, play good cards is a rule. Actually, another of the loopers, honestly sarcastic, play the best cards, I think was his advice for Destiny.
This is one of them.
All right, for a cause I believe in. You'd agree it's not as strong in your brew as the Green Bean, at least the ones that Tata ran?
But only slightly less strong. Yeah, I have the Change of Heart. I think I've got, like, in the newest version, I think I've got 5 cards that don't have it. In Orlando, I had that stupid Greedo in there. That was dumb. I mean, so many dumb. Yeah, I cringe looking at the deck list already. But right now, I think I'm only running 1 Sneak Attack, 3 Surprise Strikes, and then 1 Change of Heart. It's back to what I said, though. I don't hate it. If I flip one of those with for a cause, it's just going to the top of my deck, and I'm making sure I'm about to draw something that good.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I mean, it's Go ahead.
By the way, sneak attack with a fleet lieutenant is a 5 damage burn spell. I don't know if people realize that.
It is nice. And it could be 6 if you have a red 3 in play.
There you go, buddy. All right.
Yeah.
Leia Organa, one of the more complicated cards to play because she has two different abilities. How often are you using the resource versus the exhaust?
Yeah, Loopy, that's a great question. So I've after Orlando and I got a little bit of attention for the results. I think Ryan from Rebel Resource, who's done some great videos. If y'all are watching Ryan's stuff, go watch what Ryan does because he's done a lot on Cunning Sabine already.
He's in his element on Cunning Sabine. I mean, he's a Wisconsin guy, so I know him. I think he's actually coming to the 1K that I'm coming to or going to on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, since Orlando, Ryan and I have been talking quite a bit, and he is a bigger believer than I am in Leia as a resource play. On turn 2, he's putting down Leia more often than I am with another 2-drop. So you're getting two 1-drop, basically getting 2 first-turn drops on turn 2. I'm not as big a believer because the bodies on those aren't that great. If you go back to that, you don't have to go back to the slide, but if you look at what the other turn 2 plays are, I would much rather have almost any other turn 2 play that I listed on that slide than a Leia. But Ryan might be right about this. I like Leia because of how a kick in the groin it is to so many mid-range decks. And even winning the green bean race. If you flip Boba, I mean, especially if you didn't ramp, and I have a Leia in my hand, and you're counting on undoing 2 resources when you attack with Bubba so you can play your other stuff out of your hand, Leia's coming right down and tapping your Bubba leader every time. I love it. She saved me so many times when somebody would have ECL'd in. The ECL'd in Stalwart Battalion, I just have to survive the round. There was one game, all I had to do was live so I could ping for 1 the next turn with Sabine, and Leia came in, shut down their 7/7 attacking Stalwart Battalion that would have attacked for the second time, and I got the last turn of damage in.
And I'm a Vader player. I mean,
I love tapping me some Vader leader. Please,
tap me some Vader leader.
George.
Yeah, and then that's great.
If I see Vader, game's over unless I have a Leia. Leia can give me 1 more turn. Oftentimes, she gives you 1 more turn to draw the multitude of finishers you have in your deck to finish somebody off.
Yeah, whatever wins. And by the way, you're a Southerner. I can tell the draw.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and when it comes out as Boba, you're talking about Boba Fett. The leader.
Boba.
See the Wisconsin. Our accent just does the exact opposite with the long vowels.
Mm-hmm.
But in case that was unclear for anybody who doesn't speak Alabama. All right.
Yeah, I'm talking about Boba Fett.
Yeah. No, and actually,
Chewie.
All right.
I feel like I'm the only player in the world who likes Chewie. Nobody likes Chewie but me.
You're not right.
I built the whole deck around him.
Well, where I've seen Chewbacca and who turned me on was in Casino On, which is a cool deck that Bobby from KTOD made, but that relies on Chewbacca. So tell us about.
You get first turn Chewbacca with that deck if you ramp a resource on turn 1 with Han and play You're My Only Hope, and Chewbacca's on top of your deck. I have gotten out a first turn Chewbacca before in my Han deck.
You have a Casino Han deck? I didn't know that.
Oh man, I play all the decks. Let's have fun. The game's fun. Let's not forget that. I mean, this is still a hobby that we're doing because we just enjoy, smashing faces and playing decks against each other.
Amen, brother. Amen.
I'm smashing your head with my deck. Yeah.
All right.
But yes, I have Casino Han for fun.
All right. So tell us about how the Wookiee played in Orlando, though.
It's just fantastic. It makes the whole deck. It's why this deck has had, I think, again, between Atlanta and Orlando, a better player than me would have been 14-2 in matches. I was 12-4 with some really horrendous play mistakes that lost me a couple of matches. But you can't look at those kind of results and be like, well, something's working different. It's Chewbacca. We'll talk about the gunship more in a minute too. But when you can put down, there's 2 things I want to talk about with Chewbacca.
Okay.
One is there are very few ways in set 1 for you to do damage with a unit the turn it comes into play. The Falcon comes in untapped. The Gorilla Attack Pods. I have a sneaky way to do 5 to your base with Mace Windu, but the deck never gets to 7 resources, so I haven't been using Mace. There are that may have just exhausted the list. I can't. You can ambush Overwhelm. You can ambush Overwhelm.
I think Boba has a unit that does damage the turn it comes in. But
and of course, those evil. I call them change of heart targets. But anyway, so most people look at Chewbacca just as a big sentinel, but the fact that if they dare attack him, that's 3 damage to their base. That 3 damage is like by the time he comes down on turn 4, I'm usually only 3 damage away. Like if I get 3 more damage in, the game's over. I'm gonna ping for another point. I'm gonna have a finisher in my hand for I'll take initiative, kind of thing. And look at his stats and think about. We'll start with Boba. One reason I'm having so much success with Boba, as you snobs up north say it. What can Boba do against a 3/6 Sentinel? Use your whole ECL with the Stalwart Battalion, hoping you have your flipped leader to get 7 damage on him? Look at all of that you have to commit to getting rid of 1 turn 4 drop I put down.
Yeah, and even if he does that, I mean, you saved yourself a ton of overwhelm.
Because that's the second reason. One reason I like Chewbacca is that I can get 3 damage in with him the turn I play him. The second reason I like him is he keeps all my dudes alive. Like, let my dudes hit your base, please. Mm-hmm. I got 2 or 3 dudes by turn 4 I want to hit your face with. Bam! Here comes Chewbacca to keep those guys there.
Yep.
And if you do hit Chewbacca, he's going to jump in and hit 3 more to your base.
And the reason I wanted this masterclass was to go over some of these decisions. I mean, I think that it's good, and you can't argue with results. So, I mean, you might want to look at what it is, and if nothing else, you got to know how to do with the deck. So, if you're a green bean player, you might not resource that spec force because
this is so good against green bean. Yeah. I love it so much. I can't tell you how many green bean players in Atlanta or Orlando told me. I mean, it came up more than once where someone was like, "Wait, I resourced my spec warrior, my spec force, whatever." I was like, "I know, sorry, I have a sentinel in here. I didn't know you had a sentinel."
Well, if it happens next week, say you should have watched the masterclass.
They will, I hope.
All right, change of heart. So this was an interesting tech. I mean, I think you told the story about how it went, but I mean, did you play it in Orlando other than against George to win that match?
Change of heart is like, please put down your Fet Fire Spray. Please, 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 please play Fet Fire Spray.
So do you sideboard it in against Boba?
I ran 1 main deck.
Okay.
I can't remember. You can pull up the slide. I can't remember what my board was in Orlando. Right now, I have a second change of heart in the board to go 2 change of hearts against both Control and Boba. But I sideboarded out against Green Bean. I did steal something. I'm trying to remember. I think I took a General Dodonin. Yeah, I think I took a General Dodonin in Orlando with change of heart, pumping all my dudes up, taking away his pumps, and hit him in the face with his own general. That was fun. That's fun times.
No, and
you can use change of heart in the mirror in the aggro matchup, but it comes out. I board it out for the 3rd Chewbacca.
Yep, and be conscious for people building this. I mean, Dodonna is nowhere near as good in Blonde Sabine. I mean, you have a lot of non-rebels on your top end.
No.
Right, so.
Yeah, Falcon and Chewbacca and Gunship are not rebels.
Right.
Yeah, so I never really tried the general. Yeah.
All right, the audio insurance ad. All right, the Azituck Liberator Gunship. This is a card that, gets poo-pooed. I'll use that word.
It does.
By the content creator community. So, but
I know.
Tell us the reasoning, because I think you have a point as to some things, and your slide demonstrates it. But tell us why you think the Liberator Gunship sees play.
I want to beat you in space. I want to put a turn 1 A-Wing, a turn 2 Red 3, turn 4, I want my Falcon or something else coming in space. And if I do all of that, I showed you the slide with how few space units Boba's running. The Green Sabine doesn't have any 4 toughness stuff unless they board in their Bright Hopes. I'm telling you, this card just guarantees if even after boarding, you have a 3/3 Star Viper. You're expecting to hit with it with initiative to get 2. You better do it right away, because if you don't, here comes my gunship to take out your Star Viper. I've 7th Fleet defenders that don't have shields anymore because you took one of my units. Well, here comes the gunship, and my gunship sticks around. I'm killing your space unit, ensuring I have control of space lane, and my gunship's still going to be there to hit you next turn for 3 more damage. I don't need, again, I've already mentioned it with Chewbacca. If I can get 3 more damage to your base when you're running a 25 health base in this deck, turn 5, we're done. We're going to the next game.
You know, and you already said that you're the control. Green bean is the beatdown. I mean, this can kill a A-wing and a red 2, and it's still alive, right? Red 3.
And except their bright hopes that they board in occasionally, gunship clears all of green bean space.
All right, so this is your updated list. After what you learned from Orlando, so tell us about the changes. Tell us about the latest and greatest from Frank.
Okay, so R2D2 is big, and R2D2 really blew up in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the really high caliber John Tata type green bean players brought out the tech that I hadn't seen. I was completely caught off guard by R2. Tried him when I got back from Orlando first, tried running 3 R2s in my deck, and I realized I can't run Metal Ceremony. And since I can't run Metal Ceremony, R2 really isn't as good. It's still good. It's still okay, because I can still Fleet Lieutenant, Wing Commander. I still have some of the tricks, but I don't have as many tricks as green bean players have to make R2 more productive as a 1 attack powered dude. Red 3 can come down, but the other thing for me was that I don't need 3 Spec Force Warriors. Spec Force Warriors doing almost nothing. I know some of the really high caliber, like the KTOD top notch green Boba players are running a couple of Gamoran guards now. Great tech, very innovative, very cutting edge. The Gamoran guards. I hadn't got to see your new masterclass video. I can't wait to see it. I think it dropped today. I think I was actually testing with Colby. But anyway, so R2, 1 attack power. I don't need Spec Warrior, so I just put 1 R2 in and put 1 Spec Warrior in the board.
Okay.
So I don't want to mess up my draw curve any more than that. Also brought back the Lothel Instigator. As I showed on that slide before, I really feel like the Blonde Sabine needs something like the Battlefield Marine. I need something that's going to take 3 damage when you attack it. When I had the Rebel Pathfinders in there, really smart Green Sabine players were using their Battlefield Marines to kill my Rebel Pathfinders and winning the trade. They're still on the board. Mine's gone, yours is still on the board. Having the units to control the board is just like chess pieces on the chessboard. If you can keep more pieces on the board than your opponent, you have your chances of winning just goes up astronomically.
It is a game about board control and lane control. Absolutely. I agree with you. Okay, so I see a couple of additions to the sideboard. Spark of Rebellion, that's what that is.
I tested with George Hudson so much before Orlando, after Atlanta, and I thought, I think I can outrace George. I think I can outrace control decks. And of course, I've since come to discover I can, but the blue control package, whether it's Phil's Luke package or it's George and Guy and their blue Vader, they need 4 cards against Sabine, green or yellow. But anyway, obviously Lieutenant Childson. They need the Vigilance card itself. The really high caliber players are running Devotion main deck. Devotion is an upgrade that adds Restore 2 plus the +1/+1. And then System Patrol Craft. Mm-hmm. Again, I want to win through space. I would much rather you put down Lieutenant Childson than put down System Patrol Craft. It's a much bigger pain in my butt. For the blue control players to beat Sabine, if they don't draw any of those 4, Sabine wins every match. I mean, they're not going to win. Sabine's going to beat you if you don't draw something from there. If you draw 1, Sabine's still going to beat you. If you draw 2 of those 4 cards, it's much closer. It's probably 60-40 Sabine. If you draw 3 of those 4 cards in any combination, you're now really favored. And if you get to 4 of those 4 cards, of any combination of them, it could be 2 Vigilances, 2 Lieutenant Childsons. I don't care what it is. Sabine's not beating you if you have 4 of those. So what Spark Rebellion does, you don't play it early, because you have to go first turn unit, second turn unit, third turn unit with 4 resources. If it's a first turn drop, you can put your Spark of Rebellion with it on turn 3. That's the earliest I think I can get it in without losing my aggressive tempo plays.
Mhm.
So that I think answers what you're asking, right?
Nope, that's exactly right, and I think it's a relevant concern on any villain green deck with 5 resources and a big unit out. I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
lose their board, you can. As you were going through the story, I mean, a system patrol craft is a big problem for
Huge problem for
Blonde
me
Sabine.
because I'm so space heavy.
A system patrol craft with devotion is a nightmare because then it's sitting back.
Man, we put down a little arc, restored arc dude, put a devotion on him, and I didn't draw any space. So it was like
it was an
you see it on the stream.
It was an Inferno 4, but
horrible.
devotion on it makes it a 3/4, which changes a
Oh
lot.
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting my games with Phil mixed up. Yeah, you're right. Excuse me.
I got
Sorry,
it.
D.
Phil did it too to you. All right, so let's go through.
Yeah.
We'll go back to our
Yes.
our lovely opening slide here. That might be my best work to date. But
Real quick, Loopy, real quick. You didn't mention Black 1. I want to give Ryan full credit. The Black 1 tech against control, especially with sneak attack, is so good. Where I can get 3 new cards in my hand. Because when Black 1 comes into play, I can draw 3 new ones. And when it leaves play, I can draw 3 new ones. That's so good against control. Because if I get 3 new cards, I probably can get through the last few points of damage I need.
Huh.
It was back on the last slide. Black 1.
yep, well, interesting. We'll see how
Right
it goes.
now in testing, it's great. And
So-
I'm liking it in testing right now.
If I run into him in Madison, I know it's coming. All right, so we have here. So why don't we run through some game plans? You did well. You said you've won your games against Boba Green. What is your game plan against Boba Green?
Space, the final frontier. Space. You've got to get on space. You cannot give Boba a ECL target on the ground.
Right.
Just cannot. And if Boba, however you say it, draws a 7th Fleet Defender, a smart Boba player will ECL a 7th Fleet Defender into space and stop my space attack.
Yep, absolutely. In fact, I think that that's something that Bobby actually directly said in the video that dropped today.
I haven't seen the video yet. I can't wait to watch it. If Bobby said it, take it as gospel and gold because those guys are just top of the game. Right? I'm not kidding. They're just amazing.
Yep.
And so against Boba, I want to go into space unmolested. Please leave me alone. Please let me put a couple of space units in, back it up with a Falcon and some surprise strikes, and see if I can get that last 25th point of damage on your base on turn 4 somewhere.
Yep, and if on the other hand, I mean, you're talking about lane dodging, which is a concept in Star Wars Unlimited. I mean, the best common on the villain side, we talked about Fleet Lieutenant, maybe you mean the best common on Hero. The best common on villain side is Super Laser Technician. So do you want to play your Lothal Insurgents or Leia's early into that?
No. If I'm doing that, I had a bad draw and a bad mulligan.
Don't
because it's funny. Yeah, go ahead.
Finish what you're saying.
It's funny. It's funny that so lane dodging is definitely lane dodging is green Sabine thinking. Blonde Sabine thinking is not lane dodging. That's what the gunships are for. I decided I want to be in space. I don't care what you're putting in space. I want to be in space and I want to beat you in space. If I'm on the ground, it's because I didn't draw good cards.
Right. All right. So what about
it's ECL dodging? George Hudson and his deck idea that Guy piloted so perfectly, he was so right. He started one of his early ideas of that Blue Vader deck was don't give ECL any targets.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with it.
Very
I mean, even my game plan with Blonde Sabine against Boba is don't give any even Green Sabine, don't give them the ECL targets.
Right. And neuter the base, and then it's 25. It's five less health you have to kill. All right, talk about the Green Sabine matchup. What are you trying to do?
Kill their units.
Yep. So you actually play as a very direct control until you are
I love
close
it.
to.
I'm an old school blue control magic player anyway, and again, I showed you that slide. Go back and if they want to rewind and look at that turn 2 slide, I have some 3-4 units: Falcon, Rogue Operative. I have Ezra, and those 3-4 units can feast on all the turn 1 drops. Just feast.
And as someone who's played actually more red Sabine than any of the other colors, I can tell you, for everybody, doing these tournaments. If you're going against Red Sabine, you are the control. So
Yeah.
I've had
Build their unit.
I've had Ryan try to beat that. I've had lots of good green bean players. I mean, if they don't take care of my threats, it just gets out of hand. She can do it better. All right. What about into the hard control decks, the items and helps? Did you play one of those?
Well, you just want to go fast. One little secret is if you have A-wing and X-wing, put down the X-wing first, not the A-wing. Because they're gonna, especially if they just took initiative on turn 1, they're killing your first unit you put down. So I've actually gotten where I put a lesser unit down and put the better unit down on turn 2 or later when I have a 2-drop to put down.
That's a great insight, because as Vader against the Sabine, that's what I'm trying to do to neuter Fleet Lieutenant and Wing Leader. But you have control of what you resource, what you mulligan, everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't leave yourself with only that option, because that's what a good control player is probably going to do.
So I'm going to say something right now that is going to sound less preposterous. Bear with me.
Let's go. Do it.
I love it when a control player entrenches one of my units.
Okay, why?
Sounds crazy, right? Okay. You've just given me a sentinel-free arena. I can now, with that entrenched unit guarding my units, I start playing everything into that arena.
Yeah, I don't want to say I've never, because I play entrenched. I play a lot of turret, which is a great deck. I run entrenched in my turret deck, and I want to say if I entrench a Sabine's unit, maybe that's like 2 or 3% of the time, because it's the only way to prevent lethal, right? But I mean, it entrenched against aggro is for your dudes. I mean,
okay.
a
lot of control players don't do it that way. They entrench my thing thinking they're stopping me from hitting your base, and I'm just like, okay, I have a free, safe arena. My guys can go kill you.
If I'm turret and I'm going against your deck, a line of play I might be looking for is like one of the restored Arc 170s with entrench on it.
Oh, that would be super good. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Because now you got to deal with a 4/5 in space that restores.
Right. Yeah, but this is why this discussion's so good. You're seeing lines of play that I think this is what people need by these videos. Is a lot of people wouldn't have, even that would have been something to think about. Now it's like, oh yeah, I got to be able to kill Sabine decks in space.
Yeah, and that's it, and it is that. I mean, in entrench, the Geese and George. I mean, he's actually dodging ground mid game in a way that I've never seen of any deck, before. But entrenching out aggro players' units is usually a bad idea, because that unit's going to keep the board clear for everything else. And for cripe's sake, do not entrench K2. I mean, I've had people entrench my K2, and I'm like, I was going to entrench my K2. So, here's your overwhelm. All right, let's talk about the Vaders. I mean, you had a hard control matchup. I mean, you actually got knocked out of the tournament by Guy, on a games that were pretty good.
I did beat 3 Vaders that day. I mean, what's difficult from an ego perspective, in Orlando, I had 10 matches. I won 8 matches of the 10.
Mm-hmm.
I lost 2 matches. Let's guess which 2 matches, the only 2 I lost, were on stream, and which 8 matches that I won were not on stream.
Right.
So, yes, I did lose to George's deck, piloted by the magnificent Guy. He is so good. I beat it 3 times during the day.
Right.
Like, I beat it in round 1. I think they had a friend of theirs piloting the deck. I beat it in round 1. I beat George with it in top 16, and then just drew like the deck hated me against Guy, and Guy played it so great. And he you can hear him in the match files. He's like, "Hey, I got some great draws. It went really well to get through Sabine." I'm talking about my Sabine matchup.
And yeah. What's your game plan though? What's your game plan in hard control?
Oh, so you're on curve. 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units flip. And you use your finishers, because now the difficulty hard control, they're running 30-point bases.
Mm-hmm.
That is significantly more difficult for Sabine to beat than a 25-point base. I cannot tell you how many games I fizzled out at 26, 27 damage on a base against hard control. You hate to say paper, rock, scissors. If they draw their cards, they beat you. If they don't draw their cards, you beat them. My deck is super consistent. You can go back and look at the percentages I put on those slides. I'm going to usually draw a 1-turn, 2-turn, 3-turn drop, 4-turn with 5 resources into a finisher and another unit probably, I'm going to do that. Is your deck going to keep up with removal, big sentinel that I have to struggle through, into a vigilance, into a devotion, into some restore? If you do that, like I said, if you draw 2, 3, 4 of those answers, I'm gonna have a hard time winning. If you don't draw those answers, I'm not gonna lose. I'm gonna win. It's just who draw. It's not even if I draw. If you draw your cards, you can win. If you don't draw your cards, you will not win. And I mean those 4 big ones. The 2 sentinels I mentioned, vigilance, and
and it's different cards for Green Vader, but it's the same thing. I mean, if I have open fires and my Star Vipers, it's probably going to be close. If I don't, it's probably not.
That brings up a really good point about how, again, another little sliver that I think the Blonde Sabine's better than Green Sabine is an overwhelming barrage. More of my units have 4 toughness. So oftentimes an overwhelming barrage, which is hitting for 6, like you flipped a Boba and you have 4 + 2 is 6, you're almost always clearing out 2 Green Sabine units with an overwhelming barrage. Almost always. My deck, you're getting 1 unit. You rarely are getting a second unit with overwhelming barrage.
What's the game plan against a Luke deck?
You stack their decks. They don't draw Sentinel. They don't draw Devotion. They don't draw. It's the same story. I played with Phil a bunch this week, and we're supposed to play again tomorrow night, I think, online. And his deck is so good. He's so good, and it really is. I'm going to consistently do what I'm doing. Can you pull what you need to stop it? I mean, it's one of my best ways. Here's a little testing secret. I think not secret, but like you used to play Goldfish, like you just see how quickly you can do 25 damage or 30 damage to a base. So what I've gotten to doing is like I'll pick out 1 card of a deck. Like decks are 3 ofs, so I'll just take 1 of each one. I'll take 1 of each of your 3 ofs, and I'll stack them by. This will come out on turn 2. This is turn 4. This is turn 5 stack. I'll shuffle the stack. I'll shuffle my deck. I'll pull a hand. I'll start playing. I'll flip over 1 thing randomly from that. This is a turn 1 card that could come out from that deck. So when I do that against Luke, his plays are great, but I have no trouble getting through him unless I see multiple Sentinels and unless the Luke deck draws at least a Vigilance, if not a Devotion on something like a Yoda that I couldn't handle.
Yeah, and great player I know named Vika, friend of Late Night Gaming, does a lot of Goldfish, and I do it too, digitally a lot, where I play both sides and just kind of line out the plays. So I actually remember a thought experiment where I actually beat Vika in a best of 5 with Vader against Sabine, which is not something Vader's supposed to do. He made me then take my Star Vipers out to see how it changed the matchup, and he gave me 40 cards to play with, and I barely beat him, because you need that restore. And I think that the Devotion guys are onto something. I mean, Repair is a good card too, for control. That's gaining some steam. So look out. All right, so tournament prep. What do you do in the couple weeks before a tournament to get ready? I mean, you said you're going to one Saturday.
Well, yeah, we have a local. I think Gear Gaming's having their showdown, so I'm going to try to win me one of those sweet Mace Windows that everybody would like. They also threw in a showcase as a first prize, so that's why I was like, "Oh, not going to Richmond. I'm going to stay here and support my local game store." Plus, my wife and brother playing locally, so I'm just going to play with them this weekend. But so tournament prep is a lot about like what the other players you've had on the masterclass have said. Get in the meta. You've got to have some real strong idea. Right now, it's pretty good. You have a paper, rock, scissors meta, and then how do you test against that? I mean, you've got to build a community of great players who will test decks with you. Before Atlanta, I didn't have that. So I have my brother who's fantastic, playing with my wife's fun, playing with some of the local people's fun. There's this one guy, Carl, who's really good. I begged him, and got some hours out of him. He played Green Sabine, and he played Green Boba, and he just beat my face in. And it was so good because I'm like, oh, I need to switch this card. I need to switch that card. You have to test against the meta. I don't even feel like I even know a deck unless I got 100 games under my belt. 100 games. If you're going to get 100 games of the deck, you can't even start evaluating a deck, in my opinion. And so one thing that was so good for me was finding George Hudson at the top 8, finding Savage Dragon, talking to him afterwards. I mean, and then even after Orlando, I've now buddied up with Phil, who did the Luke deck that got third, I'm testing with more people that I met in Orlando. You have to build your community of players who are willing to be like, Frank, that's stupid. Don't play that card. Well, let me test it. Oh, maybe it's not bad.
Yeah,
Or,
and I think it's the second time I shot him up. When you say that, I mean, that is important because, I mean, one thing I appreciate about Wu, I mean, who I respect his opinions, he's a great card player, and his TTS hour log is just insane. I mean, how much that guy has actually jammed this game. But he will call out and point out, hey, I think you're full of it, Loopy, which is not everybody. But you need somebody like that. You need somebody to challenge your assumptions about your deck. So, I mean, if you got one of those, I mean, that's great. I mean, as far as community goes, I mean, I think you're dead on. You got to get good players. Late Night has a Discord, which I mean, we're recording on right now.
Just got invited. I'm excited about being active in your Discord now.
Yep.
I met those KTOD guys, and so I just now jumped in their Discord. It's fantastic. I mean, unbelievable.
And that's the other one. More than now with you, more than half the top cut, is in the KTOD Discord, and that's a good one for people who just want to get better. So you got to find some place to watch games. I agree 100%.
And it's content consumption. Like, if you're not, I mean, I'm able to like get in like maybe an hour and a half of cardio a day. I'm always listening to YouTube, to podcasts, everything Star Wars I can consume. You've got to consume content constantly. I'll speed it up so it's talking faster because I don't need to listen at real time speed. But it's so good. Like,
my wife does that. I don't know how your brains work, but I gotta listen at the normal speed. But that's everybody's a little different.
In 20 minutes, I can get 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, I can listen to a 40-minute discussion. But what you end up doing though, you have to be super careful. Is your mindset. Go into content consumption with an open mindset. Like, too many times I will be listening to a video and I will catch myself going, oh, why am I listening to this? That's so wrong. That's not how you do it. Okay, like Ryan of Rebel Resource. When I was listening to his videos on Cunning Sabine before Atlanta, before I made any results at all, just doing well in my local game shop, he was like, oh, Ezra, take out Ezra. Ezra's bad. I was like, no, it's not. I love me some Ezra. He talked me down from listening to the video. Before I ever talked to the guy the first time, I took an Ezra out. Oh my God, it played so much better with 2 Ezras, not 3. And if I hadn't been like open-minded to listening to what Ryan was saying, it was just so good in hindsight. I may have had a lesser deck than I could have had for these events. And I took Ezra out all the way for Orlando. Ezra's gone back in because I've realized the 3/4 body against Sabine is so much, Green Sabine is so much better. But that's, we've already gone down that road.
Yeah, I ain't cutting Ezra myself. But all right, so what about the day of the event itself? So
that's another mistake I made in Atlanta. I'm playing Sabine, so I'd get 10 or 15 minutes extra time between rounds. I'd run to my phone, call my brother Chris, who's like we work on this stuff so hard together, and he's so good. He's back in Birmingham, and I'm talking like the whole 15 or 20 minutes between rounds. I'm like, this happened, this was the card. I misplayed that a little bit, but this was okay because I did just like. Then I'd run into my next round. By round 5, I was exhausted. I was mentally exhausted the day of. When I played Savage Dragon, it's a blur to me. When he beat my pants off with his Palpatine deck, he has no business. He's a fantastic player. That's why he beat me. But generally, a Palpatine deck should lose to a Sabine deck generally. But I had nothing left in the tank by rounds 5 and 6 in Atlanta. So what I did different in Orlando, I rested. I didn't call my brother. I said a few hellos to a few people. Between the rounds, I did more like what Guy was talking about in some of his videos. I just relaxed and rested, reviewed my notes, maybe just took some downtime and realized that if you're playing 10, like I did 10 rounds in one day over 12, 13 hours with no lunch break. They didn't take a lunch break in Orlando.
Well, and welcome to CCGs. A lot of times there's no lunch break. Okay. And I think I've already sufficiently put the venue on blast for the searching food and
Oh yeah, I was literally stealing 2 bags of Cheetos from the organizers when they weren't looking because I was so hungry by top 8. I was starving at the top 8. Couldn't even Anyway, go ahead.
So I really do hope that Star Wars Unlimited, the organizers of events make sure that they do it. I'll tell you what, Misty Mountain Games in Madison, where I'm going on Saturday, card player himself that owns the shop, he's actually including pizza in the entry fee to make sure that everybody gets to eat for a long tournament, and
That's fantastic.
care about your players. That's it.
And one last thing about day of tournament, I violated one of my. I used to do like longer triathlons and longer running and stuff, and I always had a mantra because I did some coaching too. Don't do anything new on the day of the event, and I violated that mantra because in Atlanta I was not writing down my life totals.
Mhm.
And one of the pro players, a Magic pro player I played, he was like, Frank, if you want to really be serious at this, you have to write down, because if there's a discrepancy, you have to be able to go back through what you've written down and figure out why the life totals are wrong. He was right. One of the Green Sabine players that I beat in Orlando, if I hadn't written it down, he contested what the life total was, and I had it exactly right, exactly the damage to beat him in that game, and it held up because I had it all written down. However, I should have been practicing that before the day of the tournament. This is the essence of your question. I didn't practice that. I screwed it all up against Nick. If you watch that stream against in the Emperor Palpatine deck, that was so bad. Like I would lean over to put 1 point of damage on my little sheet and didn't notice that my heroic sacrifice into my Sabine should have come off the board. I would one time in game 3. I hit Nick with 3 points of damage for a cause I believe in. But I was organizing my cards into like which ones am I discarding, which ones am I keeping. I didn't write down the 3 damage on my sheet. Start of the next turn, I look at the lights. Oh no, Nick, you're not at 19 damage. You're at 16 damage. Take 3 damage off. That was the 3 damage.
You actually asked her to do that, right? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Like, oh, sure. There's less damage. Why not? That sounds great. Of course. I mean, it's my fault. It's completely my fault. But that's what I mean. Day of a tournament, my point being, don't try new things. If you're going to write down your damage, practice it in your local game shops. Don't do new things the day of a tournament. Yep. Don't eat new food. Don't try new sleeping habits. Don't try drugs for the first time. Like, if you want to take a muscle relaxer and you think it's going to be a long day, don't take a muscle. Okay. And the person watching the video I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about right now.
All right.
Anyway,
now
there's my answer to what day.
All right. So I think we covered that. All right. So take us home. What are your final thoughts for somebody looking to do well at a Star Wars Unlimited tournament?
So I mentioned consuming the content, finding your playtesters, finding people who will really work hard with you on decks. And the biggest thing is that we're on the precipice of what could be there's no limit to what Star Wars could be. A year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years. I've been so impressed with what the designers are doing with the preview cards. We're going to get more product eventually. I just encourage anyone who thinks this is fun, which we clearly do, lean into the fun part. Make the fun decks too. Don't just make your tournament decks. Have fun. Play crazy Chewbacca. What was the deck you ran tonight in your LGS?
Chewbacca. Yeah, we have a bounty league that encourages you to play the off-meta leaders. The second highest valued leader to play was Chewbacca. So I reformed my turret deck to have Chewbacca as the leader because I know my turret deck, back and forth like the back of my hand, and old turret Bacca, went 3-0. So there we go.
All right.
Congrats. Cool. Well, thanks very much for doing this masterclass. This was a blast. And if you're going to have fun, let's do fun doing the masterclass too. For everybody out there that watched this far, you're my hero. Signing off.